Good morning, everybody, and good afternoon in some parts of Europe. Welcome to the skills and training session of today's event. So we're delighted to have you all with us today, and we have four excellent panelists to talk with us. Obviously, yesterday when the coordinated plan and the regulation were announced, there's quite a considerable amount to be said about skills, and it has its own dedicated section in the coordinated plan, so that's great to see. And I'd just like to introduce you to our panel, and we'll take opening statements from them at that point. I'd really strongly encourage you to enter any comments and questions you have into the Slido, because that will help us make sure that you get the most out of the session. So first of all, I'd like to introduce you to Professor Frederick Heintz. Professor Hines is the head of the Reasoning and Learning Lab at Linköping University in Sweden. He's the coordinator of the Taylor ICT 48 network, and you heard about that earlier in the main plenary. And he's director of the graduate school of WASP, the Wallenberg AI Autonomous Systems and Software Program. It currently has more than 300 PhD students. He also is responsible for the Elements of AI online course there. So welcome, Frederick. Thank you, Ari. It's a great pleasure. Thank you. We also have Professor Ioannis Pitas from Greece. He's the head of the Artificial Intelligence and Information Analysis Laboratory at Aristotle University in Thessaloniki. And earlier you heard about the IDA Academy. So he's the coordinator and initiator of the International AI Doctoral Academy. And he's just finished a book, AI, Science and Society, which I strongly encourage everyone to go out and get a copy of it and read it. So good afternoon, Ioannis.
Good afternoon, Barry. Thank you very much. I'm really excited to be a member of this panel. Great,
thank you. And third, we have Andreas Geiger. He's a professor of computer science, and he heads the Autonomous Vision Group. He's based at the University of Tübingen and the Max Planck Institute for Intelligent Systems. He's a board member of the European Laboratory for Intelligent Systems, also known as ELIS, and he leads the recently established ELIS PhD program. So good afternoon, Andreas, welcome.
Thank you, happy to be here.
And thank you. And fourth, last but by no means least, we have Sara Polak. So Sara works with prg.ai in Prague, and Sara's involved in many projects. I suppose she demystifies and popularizes AI, and is currently working on educating the public in technology and building cloud communities. And she's based in Prague in the Czech Republic. So welcome, Sara.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. So we move straight to our opening statements, and I'd ask Frederick Hines to give his perspective on education and training, skills and opportunities. Over to you, Frederick.
Thank you very much. So of course, everyone agrees that skills and education is a cornerstone in achieving this, making sure that Europe has this position in AI that we want. So I would like to bring up three parts that I think is key. So in some sense, I think the kind of training technical experts in AI, that's something we've been doing for quite a long time. So we know how to do that. So there it's more a question of scaling up. But I think there are three areas where we really need to make major kind of changes and to do new things. And the first is that we need these kind of dual competences. We need healthcare professionals that also understands AI so that they can leverage that in their environment, or HR specialists. What do we need from them, and how can they take advantage of this, and so on and so forth. We really need these dual competences. The second is that we also need to educate the general population. I really think this is a key thing, that AI is going to influence more or less everybody, but most people are not aware of how this actually influences them, or how can I be an active and critical citizen in this environment where AI is one part of it. And I really think that's a major challenge, and that's why I'm engaged in this Elements of AI course that was originated from University of Helsinki, and we took it to Sweden, and with the goal, of course, to educate as many people as possible about the basics of AI. And thirdly, of course, we have this whole upskilling and reskilling of people. And again, I think this is here where we can take advantage of this dual competence. If we have people with 5, 10, 20 years of work experience, how can we educate them so that they can take the next step in their career and to take advantage of these possibilities that these new techniques offer? So I really think those are the 3 key challenges moving forward. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Frederick. That's really, really interesting. And so, Ioannis, over to you.
Thank you very much, Barry. I think that AI, science, and technology is a key ingredient in a knowledge society. And therefore, human-centered, this means anthropocentric AI education, should be tuned to form true thinkers and knowledge society citizens that can cope with knowledge abstraction and creative thinking. While machines are good at information analysis, humans can concentrate on knowledge discovery and intelligent decision-making. And this is the only way to cope with the information flood that we all experience and avoid adverse situations, for example, technophobia, technomania, and disinformation. And I personally believe that anthropocentric AI should be at the core of the European AI brand. And to this end, I think that we need a major overhaul of AI education. At elementary school level and high school level, fundamental science, mathematics, physics, algorithms should be anew coupled with humanistic studies, notably philosophy and literature, to allow children and adolescents to master both scientific knowledge and creative thinking. At the university level, I think that computer science and electrical engineering curricula need a major reformation towards branding and information science and engineering discipline to master algorithms, systems theory, and mathematics for better world and society modeling, scientific breakthroughs, and economic advances. Even we can think of establishing AI, science, and engineering as a separate discipline. This can be debated, of course. At doctoral and research level, thanks to the Horizon 2020 AI projects, European universities currently move towards integrating and coordinating their AI studies in the framework of International AI Doctoral Academy, IDA, to foster AI research excellence. And this will greatly, of course, help Europe attract AI talents from all over the world. Industry can play a crucial role in workforce upskilling in AI by setting objectives and funding continuing education. Overall, I would say that such an AI education system based on the very best European education traditions will not only fledge the European economy, but it will enable European citizens to excel socially and culturally and enable Europe to regain an international leading role by outsmarting competition. Thank you.
So thanks, Andreas. Would you give us your opening statement, please?
Sure,
thanks. That was great.
So as we know, AI, and in particular machine learning, is at the heart of this technical and societal revolution that we're just going through, with large implications for the competitiveness of Europe. But Europe is not keeping up. So many of the top academic and industrial research labs are located in North America, and also many of the AI investments are in China and North America. And so if we want to influence this development, we really need competence at all levels, but in particular also we need highly trained students, teachers, researchers, engineers, regulators, lawmakers, etc., to stay innovative while at the same time also acting responsible and following our European values. One important pillar that's particularly important to Alice is the higher education, and to support excellent young researchers across Europe by connecting them to leading researchers in our field, and to offer them a variety of training and networking activities to allow them to conduct cutting-edge curiosity-driven research and to publish at the leading conferences and turn the most innovative ideas and products into startups or to support the local European ecosystem. And so at Alice, we have created the Alice PhD program with exactly this goal. And after 1 year of its establishment, we have now attracted more than 1,000 applications in our first call and accepted the top 5% to this program, where we try to connect them to the leading researchers from different countries across Europe. But this is only one of several important aspects. And of course, I'm looking forward to discussing the other opportunities to strengthen Europe's AI skills together with you.
Great, thank you. Thanks very much, Andreas. That was very interesting. And Sara, over to you for the final opening statement.
Thank you very much, and it's great to be here. Thank you for being invited. I'm originally an archaeologist and an evolutionary anthropologist, so I've seen my share of the way that humans have evolved through history with the help of historical technologies. I've also seen the way that the human brain has evolved over the course of 2 million years, and as well as society. And I think that on one hand, we're in an unprecedented situation where we have the most democratizing technology available to us in the form of the internet, where basically you can educate yourself from the luxury of your own home and you don't even need to go to university. That's not saying that you shouldn't go to university, but that's saying that multiple new models of how to fit into the world around us are beginning to emerge. And how better to fit in with that than with the use of digitalization and artificial intelligence. However, at the same time, I feel that artificial intelligence is often being fetishized and anthropomorphized in an unhealthy way, in the sense that people basically see it as the Terminator, they see it as the iRobot, kind of something to be scared of, as they have done when electricity first came around, and there were anti-electricity propaganda cartoons of people frying themselves on various like electricity wires just hanging around randomly on the street. We all know that's not the case, that we're relatively far away from artificial general intelligence, but the people don't necessarily know that. And we must, I think our fundamental role is good communication, in the sense of not isolating ourselves from the public, not making it too bureaucratically complicated, because it's complicated as it is, and talking to them in a down-to-earth way and educating them. So Elements of AI, I think, is a fantastic way of doing that. I myself am, and at prg.ai, we're leading the program here in the Czech Republic. So myself and Tomáš Mikolov, who's one of the forefront experts in machine learning, the author of Word to Vec, and currently working on the research of artificial and general intelligence, we're doing basically like hand-holding the public to make sure that they not only go through the course, but that at the end of it, they don't only have a certificate, but the actual set of skills. So I think actually taking everything with a bit of a grain of salt and talking about it like humans, and not scaring ourselves unnecessarily, and not scaring the public with regulation and bureaucracy and all the things that go with the complexity of the new AI ecosystem that's emerging, is going to be key. Because if the public don't get it, then research and startups will stagnate. I spent 7 years in startups, either leading them or working in them myself, and the huge gap between theory of AI and the reality of AI is pretty big. And I think that we need to bridge that as much as possible through multidisciplinarity. Thank you.
Very, very good. So thank you very much for those great opening remarks, and we're getting quite a lot of comments and questions in on Slido, which is great. So I suppose one question I have for you is, a number of you talked about educating the general public and making sure that people have the skills. You know, Frederick talked about dual skilling. A number of you have mentioned elements of AI. So, you know, are we doing enough in terms of educating the general public, or are there other things we should be doing? You know, is elements of AI the solution, or are there other things that we might want to try? I'm not sure if Frederick or Sara would like to take that, given your involvement in those things.
So I would say that we need to do much, much more. I mean, of course, elements of AI is a great start. Actually, for some, it might be, I mean, they might need something more basic. So I think we need to do a number of things. So actually, me and some colleagues, we are working on a research proposal on AI engagement. So basically, we want to study what makes people engage with AI or disengage with AI, and to really kind of looking at those that you normally do not consider. And I really think there's a lot of things we don't know, but we really need to find ways of making more people have a realistic view and a realistic expectation on this technology.
Very good, thanks. And Sara, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I actually think that one of the things we can do is, for example, matchmaking students at universities, but also at the lower educational levels with industry. So putting them there into practice and actually showing them the nuts and bolts of how it works in real life, because like what again, like theory of AI is one thing, but when you actually like have to implement the sensors in a factory and like transfer the data from analog into digital and then label it and then analyze it, that's a whole process that doesn't necessarily get taught. So I think getting their hands dirty, whether that's form of excursions or internships, and again, like blending those bubbles of the public and industry, academia, and the state, I think is going to be increasingly important.
So there was a question directly to Ioannis, in fact, related to elementary schools and education at that level. So at the non-third level states of education. So what kinds of things are being done there, or what kind of things should we be doing in those areas? Do you want to talk to that a little bit more?
Well, Barry, let's check what has happened in the first scientific revolution in the 16th, 17th, and 18th century in Europe. At that time, we had a strong coupling between basic science and also humanistic studies, and it did really produce results. Now, in the last, let's say, 50 years or so, we deviated from this track. Because we went more towards skills development rather than education, and now we pay the price because we see all this technophobia, because people are flooded with information that they cannot grasp and they cannot interpret. So, in my view, we should have strong theory. This means strong mathematics, strong physics, strong algorithms, not necessarily programming languages, and couple them with some elements from philosophy, for example, that enable people to think. And once people can think and can abstract, then they can master knowledge. Because at the very end, information explodes exponentially, but knowledge at most increases linearly. So we can cope with knowledge increase, but we cannot cope with information increase. Let's leave it information increase to machines, and we should cope with knowledge. That's my idea.
Add something.
Great. Yeah, sure, Andreas. Yeah, and I'll go to Frederick then. Go ahead, Andreas. Yeah.
On elementary schools, I think we are not doing very well at all, and we need to do much better. Currently, we are, despite the discipline itself is very attractive, we are at the elementary level not attractive enough, and we're not teaching computational thinking enough. And so we need to really educate the teachers, and we need to have a proper curriculum to integrate computer science and also AI and machine learning at a very early on into elementary school, also to bring it into the families and to have people be more aware of what's going on.
Great. Frederick, I think you wanted to comment on that one, did you?
Yes, I mean, I think this is actually extremely important. And just as Andreas is saying, I think this is severely lacking in current primary education. So I've been involved in introducing computational thinking and programming into the Swedish primary education national curriculum. But the thing is that basically the teachers don't know it. They get very little training, and therefore they basically skip it. And I really think one key challenge here is that computer science, programming, computational thinking, AI, and so on, is considered to be a specialized interest of a few technical experts. And I really think this is the wrong analogy. This is something that influences everyone. Just like we learn about biology and chemistry and physics and these natural sciences and so on in the primary education, we really need to understand the digital as part of society that we also live in, and as important. And I also think we should not focus on, the programming languages or specific algorithms and techniques. That's not the part. What's really important is what are the kind of influences of these techniques and tools on me as a citizen, and how can we understand what you can do and cannot do. And I really like this. Computational thinking, how to use these tools as part of your problem solving.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like people who've never heard of computational thinking sort of formally often do think in a computational way, but they don't recognize it. So I think also just helping people recognize that how you solve that problem is actually computational thinking, and so breaking down the barriers. Obviously we've spoken a lot about the sort of formal education system, and yes, we did mention the elements of AI, which is much more of grassroots type approach. But let's talk a little bit about the role of industry and what they can do in terms of education and training. So, particularly in terms of upskilling. So do you have any views on how industry could also be helping with the skills challenge? Does anyone want to comment on that? So, Sara, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but very quickly, because my my last role was actually in Industry 4.0, and I found that a lot of the times, yeah, you get your pilot approved, everything's great by the innovation manager, but then you actually need the workers to be labeling the data, for example, and oftentimes that there was a huge psychological pushback, both in terms of actual sabotage, and I don't actually blame them, because if I was in that position and I had the psyche of this little black box is going to replace me, I'd probably do the same. So I think that one of the things is some form of evangelization, but not the kind of a startup is with a MacBook comes into a factory and talks about how great AI is. I think much more relying on decentralized grassroots movements like elements of AI, but adjusting them to the specific setting and training people in that specific setting, making contracts with, for example, HR departments there, because they don't have the capacity to do this on top of their regular work. So I think that there needs to be almost like a decentralized network of volunteers. We're already actually kind of doing that here in Prague. There's a group of enthusiasts at the Faculty of Informatics at the CTU who do various hackathons, and into the hackathons we, for example, invite people from all walks of life to be able to participate. We also do things like pub quizzes, like evening schools, really things that people also enjoy, to make sure that they can actually not just do it because HR told them to, but that they can see that they can genuinely reskill, and that it's not a barrier anymore, and that you can be working in a warehouse one day, and the next year you can reskill and take up a job that involves AI, because AI is just basically a set of methods for crunching data. It's not that complex, and I think explaining that principle to them is very, very important.
Sure, and I guess this comes back maybe to the dual competence idea that Frederick was talking about at the beginning. So I suppose one question I have is, do you think that people can get sufficient depth on both competences? So if I am a HR person or I'm a manufacturing person, can I get sufficient competence on the dual AI side? Frederick, do you want to take that, and I'll come to Ioannis then?
So I think what we have to realize, that what these people need to know is not how to do research on machine learning techniques. It's more about using existing toolboxes and so on, but plugging, they need to be able to transform the knowledge that they have about their profession, their specialization, into these computational problems or computational data analysis or things like that, so that they can get a better insight or be able to solve their problem better, and then interpret the results that they get from these methods. And of course, that is it's more the skill of using than the skill of developing. And we also see a lot of this kind of no programming tools and so on. So you're lowering the barriers to actually start using it.
Great, thank you. And Ioannis, you wanted to come in there, I think, did you?
Yeah, first of all, I think that if the students have strong theoretical background, then they can survive in a world where they can have a major and a minor topic, but without strong background, they're going to be just superficial. So this is thing number one. Thing number two, with respect to industry and universities, we see a game change. We see, for example, research companies being ahead of universities in a certain respect. We do not see it in education, which is good for universities, of course. And then we need the same strong cooperation in education, and then universities have a really significant role to play there, with the help and funding from companies, for example.
Very good. So there's a question here that thanks Andreas for highlighting the LS PhD program, and asks about the other opportunities that exist. So we'll come to the question about the other opportunities in a second, because I would like to have Ioannis talk a little bit about ADA. But before doing that, there is the question of dealing with bias, I suppose, diversity on AI programs. And so I'd just like to ask Andreas, you mentioned that you had about 1,000 applications to your PhD program. And can you comment a little bit on about the sort of diversity you're seeing? And do we need to take very specific measures to ensure that we get good diversity amongst the applicant group as well as the group that is selected. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely.
And we come to Fred, yeah.
I mean, we see it everywhere, as I mean, in our applications, that there's females are underrepresented, certain ethical groups are underrepresented, people from certain countries are underrepresented, and we are trying to take action, and we also have to start early with these actions. It's really important, and this is also one of our goals. Yeah.
Thank you. And Frederick, you had your hand up there.
Yeah, so what I wanted to add is this what Andreas mentioned at the end. We have to start early. So, I mean, there is this kind of expectation, for example, that we at the university, we should increase our diversity. But of course, we are dependent on who applies to our programs. Of course, we can adapt our programs to make them more interesting and to a wider variety. We can do something about the marketing and so on. But I really think if we're going to get a more representative group of developers in this area, we really need to focus on primary education, because it seems like the kids basically make their choice somewhere in like middle school. That's when they start to kind of separate out into different groups. And if you don't reach them before that, it's really hard to make a major difference later on. And that's another reason why I think it's so important to have this in the primary education.
Great, thank you. So Ioannis, so IDA is a very ambitious initiative, and it's one of the great success stories of what can happen between the networks. So you've put a huge amount of effort into bringing all of the ICT 48 networks that we mentioned earlier together to form IDA. And there's questions in the slide about, well, what are the opportunities? Obviously, there's the LS PhD program, but do you want to talk a little bit about the kind of opportunities and how you see IDA serving education needs in Europe?
Let's start with the global picture. You know, we know that the US leads the research on AI, and China follows suit. So if as Europeans want really to excel, then we have to join forces somehow, and this is what we try to do in IDA. We have many excellent European universities, so we have very good quantity and good quality as well. If we can make them cooperate somehow, then a student from our university can attend a course in Finland, and you, Barry, can deliver a course that is going to be attended by people worldwide. This is very good. This facilitates flow of information, and in particular, it facilitates the exchange and the propagation of new ideas that are very essential, both for PhD studies and for innovation. So we really want to facilitate information exchange and coursework exchange between the European universities, because most of this material is there already in these services. So if we make them available across Europe, first of all, then we can really help not only create a very good, very well-educated personnel, but we can also attract talents from all over the world to come and work in Europe.
Okay, great.
That's what we try.
Okay, super. So thank you very much. We're coming to the very end. We have my stopwatch here that I'm looking at tells us we have 30 seconds. So I'd like to thank you, each of you, for participating. I think there's been some excellent comments and excellent debate. We still have a number of additional questions coming through. So hopefully, maybe on Twitter or some other forum, people can reach out to you and participate. So on behalf of Vision, I'd like to thank Ioannis Pitas, Andreas Geiger, Frederick, Hines, and Sara Polak for joining us. It's really been fantastic. And we'll shortly be moving to the final plenary stage just for a wrap up. So thanks all for contributing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.